Okay, in this video we are going to talk about shifting, reflecting, and stretching graphs of functions graphically and analytically. Our first function that we're going to deal with is our square root function. And with our square root function, we did have some basic numbers that we dealt with. And what we're going to do is use those basic numbers. Now I'm going to do a t-chart and I want you to do one as well. We're going to do x and f at x, and I want you to do f at x as well. And we're going to start with 0, and if x is 0 and we plug in, we're going to have the square root of 0, which is 0. We're going to plug in a 1, and so we're going to have the square root of 1, which is 1. And then we're going to plug in 9, and so we have the square root of 9, which is 3. And so we're going to put these together, and we're going to have our points 0, 0. We're going to have the point 1, 1. And then we're going to have the point 9, 3. And so we're going to go off just a little and then up 3. And so we're going to have our square root function, and we're going to draw it in the best we can. And we're going to have something that looks like that. Notice we have it closed on the left side and an arrow on the right side. Okay, now looking at part B, we can do two options. One option is a longer option than the other. One way is to go ahead and take our basic t-chart, and I do want you to copy the t-chart. So we're going to copy x and f of x. Yes, please write this down because you are going to have questions where I want to see the t-chart. And you had 0, 0, 1, 1, and 9, 3. And again, where that came from was right back over here. And so you've got, again, those basic points plotted. But now for this one, notice that we've got a +2 on the outside. And if we remember, that means that we need to move our function up 2. Now notice what shortcut we're told. And this is dealing with your t-chart because we need to make sure we have now this time both x and y correct. We need a t-chart for it. We need to make sure we have the correct points for both x and y. So this is why it's important, and we need to have that t-chart. So notice what it says is add 2 on the outside. So if we're adding on the outside, that's going to be talking about your y values. And if it says inside, that's going to be your x values. So this is trying to help us in the point that +2, notice that's kind of on the outside portion. So that's where you need to add your 2. So let's go back down here, and it's saying to add 2 on the outside, which is going to be our y values. So our t-chart for this, if we bring back over our t-chart, x and f of x, and yes, you're going to have to build the t-chart, so please write it. Your x values are still going to be the same. So you're going to have 0, 1, and 9. Because we're adding to the outside, you're adding to the y's, so you need to add 2 to each y value. So 0 plus 2 is going to give me 2. So that y value is 2. And then 1 plus 2 is going to give me 3. And then or nope, sorry, 3 plus 2 is going to give me 5. So now let's plot our points and see, and you can even do a new t-chart. A lot of students would rather do a new t-chart than graph it. That way you have so many numbers, it's a little bit easier. The new t-chart is 0, 2, 1, 3, 9, 5. Those are the points that you plot. So we have 0, 2, and now it's starting to mirror that, moving up 2, 1, 3, and then we go all the way out 9 and up 5. And now do your best, now I'm not an artist, and go through your point the best you can. And again, what I'm looking for on your graph, you've got your closed left side, arrow on the right side, and you've done your best going through your points. All right, now let's look at our next one. Now we have -2, and so what you're going to do is subtract 2 now on the outside. So again, let's go ahead and build our basic t-chart, and again that basic t-chart, x and f of x, and it was 0, 0, we had 1, 1, and we had 9, 3, and now we're going to build a working t-chart here. And what are those instructions telling us to do? Notice it's saying to subtract 2 on the outside. Again, remember a -2 on the outside, that meant to lower your graph by 2. But we need the correct y values to go with it. And so our x values are going to stay the same. And then subtracting 2, remember that's going to be 0 minus 2, 1 minus 2, 3 minus 2. And so our final t-chart, x and f at x, you're going to have 0 and -2, 1 and -1, and 9 and 1. And so now let's plot our points. We have 0, -2. So again, if we look all the way back at our original, we see we have dropped this down by a factor of 2. And then 9 all the way out to 9, +1. And again, connecting those dots, which I am not the best at. Alright, so there's doing the outside. Now it looks like we're probably going to have to do inside next. And notice inside, working with the inside, that means that we're going to be changing up the x values. So again, on the inside, that means that you're changing the x values. But I would still start with that common t-chart. Do your basic one. You've got x and f at x. And start with your basic. We had 0, 0, 1, 1, and we also had 9, 3. Now this time, we're going to change our x values. So our y values, or f of x values, are going to stay the same. Okay, so again, looking at this, since our y values should stay the same, we can go ahead and copy 0, 1, and 3 over. Those are going to stay the same. And notice what it's telling us to do. We need to add 2 on the inside. But now keep in mind, in other words, what's going on here, what would this tell you to do if you were working, and this one's tricky, wouldn't this move, doesn't this move left? Doesn't it? If we're working on just our parent function transformations, that moves to the left. You're supposed to move left. Well, let's see why. Because this isn't solved for x. You always try to solve for x. So what we're going to do is take all of this that's underneath there, x plus 2, and we're going to set it equal to 0. And notice that you're going to get x equals -2. And so that's really the value that you're changing on the inside. So on the inside, the x values change by -2. That's why you moved to the left in your parent function notations. Whenever you were moving those, you moved to the left, just like over here in part E, you moved to the right. Well, when you do this step here to see by how much you set it equal to 0, you're going to get a +2. So that's why you're moving to the right too over here. On this side, you're moving to the left too. Alright, so there's the why behind it. If the why behind it confuses you, do go back and remember your rules. You're moving left, you're moving right. Alright, so down here we are moving to the left. We're really adding a -2 on that inside. So let's see what we're going to get. We're going to have a 0. Let me get my pen working. We're going to have a 0 plus a -2. We're going to have 1 plus a -2 and a 9 plus a -2. We're moving that to the left too. And so our final product, let's see what that looks like. Our final product, you're going to have -2, and then you've got your 0 to go with it, and then you've got -1, 1, 7, 3. Now we're ready to graph this, and look at what happens when we graph it. You're going to have -2, 0, and it is looking like we have moved that basic graph to the left. -1, 1, so back 1, up 1, and then 7, 3. 7, 1, 2, 3. There it is. And here's our transformation where we had to go to the left too. So the why behind it is a bit confusing, but you need to know how to work through these and know why you're moving left and why you're moving right. So the same on part E, subtracting 2 on the inside. So that's what we're doing there. But again, let's think about how are we going to know if we're really adding or subtracting. But we were always told just do the opposite of what was going on the inside. So doing the opposite of the inside, we would really add 2 there. But again, what's going on? So we're going to take x minus 2, set that equal to 0, and notice that we really need to add a factor of 2. So this is telling us that we need to move to the right. So we're moving to the right too. So let's go, and we're on the inside, so we're moving our X to the right too. So let's look at an old T-chart and combine that with a new one. So again, we had 0, 0. We had 1, 1, 9, 3. And to build our new T-chart, again, our Y values are staying the same, so 0, 1, and 3. But we are adding 2 to the axis, and we see why we're adding 2, hopefully. And so our final T-chart for this, notice we're going to have 2, 0, we're going to have 3, 1, and 11, 3. So we're going to have 2, 0. We are going to have 3, 1, and 11, 3. Oh my goodness, that's going to be way off the charts, isn't it? So 11 way over here, and then up. We're going to put that point way over here. And so we have something that looks similar to that. All right, so hopefully we've got outside and inside, and which of the two coordinates that does switch up. Now with the -1 on the outside, notice that says to multiply on the outside of -1. So let's see which of the two coordinates that changes. So we have x and f of x. And again, we have our coordinates. And so now we've got to figure out our new coordinates. And what in the world is that going to change? And I can almost hear some students saying, oh, you've got to reflect it over the x, and you are right. But which coordinate is changing if we're flipping it over the x? Because we need a T-chart to go with that. So, because sometimes we get so used to writing nothing and just doing a quick sketch and say reflects over the x-axis, and I can't give you credit for that. That's unfortunate because you stated the rule, but I can't give you credit for it. You've got to demonstrate your knowledge. So that means I need some T-charts and some numbers. So help me out here. That means we are reflecting. You're correct. But doesn't that mean if I'm reflecting over the x-axis, that means that it looks like I'm changing some y values if I'm reflecting over the x. So that means y values get changed. So x's are going to stay, and y values, and really they're just going to change signs, aren't they? So that means 0. Well, there's no -0. However, I've seen a hard try for some, but let's just leave 0 alone. And -1, and then -3. And let's see if that really does make what we want it to be. So 0, 0, 1, -1, and then 9 way out here, and then 3. So something way out there. And it does make that flip. So now when you present something like this, now you get full credit. Because you've given me a T-chart with it. You've shown me the old T-chart that went with it. And then you've given me the graph. And the graph is correct with its points. So be careful on these. Some of them are easy and easy enough to lose points on for sure. So be careful with that. Now these next few, they're going to combine inside and outside and just a little bit of everything else. So let's see what we can do, and this definitely is a good place to have all of your T-chart mess going on for sure. Alright, so we're going to do X, and we're going to get our f of x, and we're going to go ahead and put inside here, I need to make that a little bit more, our original. So we've got 0, 0, 1, 1, 9, 3. Now let's start changing it up, and as far as what you put where, just don't skip a step. I encourage you, do not skip any of those steps. So you've got a negative x on the inside. So a negative x on the inside, that looks like it's telling you at the top, multiply the x by -1. So we're going to change our x values by a factor of -1. So that's going to give me 0, -1, -9. And then notice on the outside, which is going to be our y values, we're going to multiply those by a factor of 2. So if we take our y values and multiply those by 2, then we get 0, 2, and 6. And that's it for our T-chart. So knowing all of those little shortcuts we just went through made this a quick T-chart. And now we just plot the points from that T-chart. So we go 0, 0, -1, 2, -9, so all the way back here, and then 6. And then connect your points. And I encourage you to check your work. If you want to, you can check your points in your work with Desmos, DESMOS.com. It's a great app if you don't already have it. I do encourage students to download that. It's a free app you can get for your phone or your computer. You can just go to Desmos.com. Great way to check your points here just to make sure that you have them right, or you can find your mistake pretty quickly. Alright, so for our next problem, again, it's a square root function, and so we need to get our basic. And so let's go ahead and do x and f of x and fill in those 0, 0, 1, 1, 9, 3. Now it's handy knowing those 3 points for sure. Okay, this one is tricky. It has 2 negatives inside here. So remember us taking the inside and setting that equal to 0. Now we do definitely have a negative there, but keep in mind if we set this equal to 0, it's kind of wanting us to think, oh wait, we're going to make that a positive 2. And we do when we move this over, but we still have negative x equals positive 2. And then when we move that negative over, x equals -2. So we are still moving to the left too. So we have to be careful with those negatives. So we have a negative on our x, making that negative, but we are still moving that to negative as well. So when we do our t-chart, we've got a couple of negatives that we're going to have to deal with, and that's just because this is such a tricky problem. So let's build our t-chart and see what we can do with it. So we have our x and our f of x. And so we are going to go ahead and say, well, I know my x is going to be what's changing. My y's are not changing, so I'm going to bring in 0, 1, and 3. Because again, the x's are what's changing here. It's all on the inside. There's nothing on the outside getting changed. And so on the inside, again, we're going to make 0, 1, and 9. We're making those negative, and then we're subtracting 2. And so we're also going to stick a negative 2 to those. So that's what's going on with this one. So to those points. So we're going to have a negative 2. We're going to have a negative 3 and negative 11. That's what's going to be generated for our t-chart. So again, that one was a little bit tricky because it had 2 negatives there. But keep with the same steps. There was a negative on the x, so you knew that the x's were going to be a negative. And then solve for x, and that told you what you were going to change your x values by. And that was, again, a negative 2. So, and if you needed to rewrite all of this in a different t-chart, that's okay. Go ahead and do it. And now we've got to plot this. So we have negative 2, 0, negative 3, 1. And when things start looking like this, I start thinking, oh no, I've done it wrong. But that negative x, remember, that reflects over the y-axis. It wasn't negative on the outside, it was negative on the inside. And then negative 11, 3. So that's way over here somewhere. And so it has reflected correctly and shot off somewhere to the left. All right, now let's try the next one. Hopefully these are getting a little easier. Maybe, might not be. We'll get good practice with it. Okay, we have our x and our f of x. And again, our basic t-chart for this function. And then we're going to build one that's changing. Okay, and so again, notice that we have an x that's negative, and then we've got a positive 2, and we know that something's going to have to change up there with that. So let's set all of the stuff that's under the radical equal to 0. So we're going to take all of this as usual, negative x plus 2, set that equal to 0. We have negative x equals negative 2, so x is 2. So that tells me that I'm going to change the x values by positive 2. So down here, so that means that I'm going to change the x values by negative. Let's change our color here. So these are going to go to negatives, and then I'm going to change it by a factor of 2. Now, did the y's change any? No, so they're going to come back over. Everything happened on the inside of the radical. And then we've got 2, we've got 1, and we've got -7. So here again we have 2, 0. We have 1, 1. -7 and 3. -7 and 3. Okay, based on your observations, predict how each of the graphs of the functions below would be different from the graph of f of x equals the square root of x. State the changes that would be made to the basic graph. Then state the domain and range of each function. Okay, a couple of ways to go about this one. We could go ahead and look at an old t-chart. 9, 3. I always want to put 3, 9. I don't know why. And then try to build the new from that. We could take this portion inside here. We always need to take that, set it equal to 0. Negative x equals -1, so x is 1. And we know our x's are going to change by negative. And we know our y's are going to move downward by 3. And then we've got a vertical dilation of 2. So we've got a lot going on here. So we could go ahead and write it out. Let's see, there's a vertical dilation. You're welcome to abbreviate. Vertical dilation of 2. And then, let's see, what else do we have? We are going to move, let's see, a reflect over the y-axis. So let's do that one next. Outside, let's just do left to right. So we're going to say reflects over y-axis. And let's see, we're going to move to the right 1. Okay. And we're going to move down 3. Now, how in the world are we going to do a t-chart for that? Because we need our points to plot. So let's see. Well, moving down 3, let's go ahead and take care of that, because that'll be pretty good for us. So down 3, let's see, that's going to be -3. And then, let's see, down 3. Oh, no, you gotta multiply by 2 first. Silly me, I forgot about that 2 being out there. Well, you do get, I just didn't say it, multiply by 2 and then the 3, so that's where the -3 came from. And then your next one, multiply by 2 and then -3. So multiplying by your 2, it's going to give us 2. And then -3 is going to give you a -1. and then multiplying by 2 again. It's going to give you 6, and then minus 3 is going to give you 3. There we go. I knew that -3, it should not have come that quickly. There was a 2 in there. Goodness gracious. All right, so that took care of the outside. Now let's take care of the inside. So on the inside, we've got to make x negative and then add a 1 to it. So if we do that, so 0 is still 0, and then add a 1 to it, it's 1. And then if we take our next one and make that negative, that's -1, add 1 to it, that's going to give us 0. And what about 9? So if we take 9 and make it negative, that's going to be -9 plus 1, so -8. So that's going to be our new t-chart. So let's write it out so it's a little bit more clear. So we have 1, -3, 0, -1, -8, 3. So let's sketch this bad boy out. 1, -3, 0, -1, and -8, 3. There we go. All right, time to move on to the next one. And again, start out with your basic. Oh, that should be h of x. Did I make that other? I did not make that g of x. Oh, goodness. Y'all, let's go back. And I made that. I spell g of x with f of x sometimes. That should be g of x. Try to keep the same functions. Goodness. All right, so again we have 0, 0, 1, 1, 9, 3. Glad we've had the same function all the way through. All right, so let's think about what we have here. We're going to reflect over the x-axis. X-axis, which really changes the y values, doesn't it? And let's see, we're going to move x minus 1 equal to 0, so x is 1. So we move it to the right 1. So our function moves right 1 and up 3. We're adding 3 to the y's. All right, so let's start us a new t-chart and see if we can figure out what goes in it. All right, so flipping over the x-axis, so that means that we're going to change the y values to negative. And then we are going to move up 3, so we're adding 3 to all of these. And then moving right 1, so I'm adding 1 to all of those. Okay. And so let's put these together. My first point should be 1, 3. The next one should be 2, 2. And the last one should be 10, 0. right, now let's plot our points. So we have 1, 3 over 1 up 3, 2, 2, and 10, 0. So we're going to go over 10 and up or down 0. So our function is going to look something like that. Okay, this is going to be a good page for us to summarize all of the different motions and rules that we have for the functions. So notice that the first thing that we have is a plus c on the outside. So this is going to go up c units. And what the coordinates would look like is going to be x comma y plus c. On the next one, this is going to go down c units. And this is going to be x comma y minus c is what that coordinate would look like. And then the next one, notice inside here, that plus c though, this is where we're going to say x plus c equals 0. And so this is, again, over here, let's just put it over here so we'd have a little more room. X equals negative c. And so this is going to be where our coordinate is going to be moving left c units. And so for this one, you're going to see it written as x minus c comma y. In other words, you're moving the x coordinate. For this one, you're going to see x minus c equals 0. So x equals c. In other words, you're moving right c units. And so you're going to have x plus c comma y. The next one that you have, notice the negatives on the outside. And so you're going to reflect over the x-axis. And if you reflect over the x-axis, you're actually changing the y values. And notice now the next one, you've got negative on the inside, so you're going to reflect over the y-axis, which is changing the x values. Okay, and the next one, you're doing the absolute value of f of x, which is the y values. So you're going to reflect, this one's kind of different, you're going to reflect from below to above x-axis. Everything that's below the x-axis gets reflected to above. And so you would see something that looks like this. And then this is going to be a vertical dilation. By a factor of a. and you're going to see it as x comma a times y. Okay, now we're going to look at some other parent functions, so to speak. And the first one here is going to be our quadratic. And so for that, we are going to get us a t chart, and we're going to have some good basic values that we can use from that. So we're going to have x and f of x, and just some basic numbers, of course 0, and if we plug in 0 we get 0 back, and positive 1, 1 squared is 1, negative 1 squared is positive 1, 2 squared is 4, and negative 2 squared is positive 4. So there's us a basic t-chart that we can use, and if we go ahead and plot those points, it should give us a parabola. And so let's keep getting our points to 4, and then negative 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then do your best to make a curve. Of course, I'm not the best drawer, so that looks absolutely pitiful, but it's the best I've got. So, all right, now let's go look at our next one. This is our absolute value function, and the points are very similar to those of our quadratic. So again, let's get us a very basic t-chart. And so we have 0, 0, positive 1, negative 1 is going to give me positive 1, 2 is going to give me 2, and negative 2 is going to give me a positive 2 again. And once more, plotting these points, we got 1, 1, 2, 2, negative 1, 1, negative 2, positive 2. And so this one does make a linear looking graph on each side. And there's your basic absolute value graph. And there's the points that go with it. And these are the t-charts that you would want to use when you're doing your transformations. Right, now for our cube and cube root, we need to build again a good t-chart for these. So again, let's do a basic t-chart. We've got our x and f of x, and good old 0, 0, 0, and then the cube root of 0 is 0. We're going to plug in a 1, and the cube root of 1 is 1. Negative 1, cube root of negative 1 is negative 1. And we need something we can take the cube root of, and that's going to be 8. Cube root of 8 is 2. And negative 8. Cube root of negative 8 is negative 2. Alright, now let's plot those points. We have 0, 0. We have over 1, up 1. We have back 1 and down 1. And then we have to run over 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then up 2. So that point's going to be somewhere in there. And then we have to go back 8 and then down 2. So somewhere back in here. and then connecting those with that basic shape. There's, that's going to run into our T-chart. I'm going to put a negative up there. Alright, now for cube. So really the cube is the inverse of cube root, so we can just swap our x's and y's and have it. So we're going to go through and see why though. So again, we want to do 0, 0. That's going to work. If we swap 0, 0, we get 0, 0. 1, 1. If we swap 1, we get 1. If we plug in 1 and cube it, we get 1. If we plug in negative 1, well, negative 1 all cubed is still negative 1. And let's see. Well, we don't want to plug in 8. 8 cubed is a really large number. But this is what I meant by swapping the x's and y's. If I plug in a 2 and cube it, I get 8. So notice we're seeing that we are swapping places with x and y. That's what an inverse does. Alright, and now plotting our points, we have 0, 0, 1, 1, negative 1, negative 1, and then we have 2, 8, 2, and then all the way up to 8, 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, and then we're going to have negative 2, 8, and then we're going to connect those dots. Alright, so we have some more good basic graphs, and we have some good basic T-charts with this. And now we're ready to go ahead and do some swapping around with it and some function transformation. Alright, so for these problems we need to describe how the graphs of each of the following functions will be different from the basic function, and then we need to graph the function. Alright, so let's start off with describing how the function will be different. So that's our transformations. So we need to describe, well, what's going to go on here. So over to the side, remember we take what's on the inside here, that x plus 2, set that equal to 0, so we get x is negative 2. So we see that we are going to move left 2, and then we are going to also move down 3. So now instead of just picking up one point and moving it and dropping it and just drawing a quick sketch through it, we're going to get our T-chart and we're going to do this where we have for sure points. So let's get our original T-chart for our x squared, and then we're going to adjust that T-chart. So let's get the original. And the original we had 0, 0, 1, 1, negative 1, 1, 2, 4, and negative 2, 4. Alright, and now let's do what we said we needed to do. We are going to move left 2 and down 3. So left 2, that means we are going to add a negative 2 to each one of these. And then down 3, which means we're going to subtract a 3 from each one of these. Now, if you feel better with this side saying you're subtracting a negative or subtracting 2, that's fine. It's just I had no room and had to put it at the front. Alright, so now let's see what the new t-chart's going to look like. And plot our points. Because we're interested in getting several points correct, not just one point. So here we have -2 and then -3, and then we're going to have -1, -2, -3, -2, 0, 1, and then finally -4, 1. Now we have the points that we need to graph it. So let's graph it -2, -3, -1, -2, -3, -2, 0, 1, and -4, 1. And it looks like we can see our parabola shape. And there's our graph. So here's the correct t-chart with all the correct points, and there's our graph. Alright, so now let's go to the next one. That's our absolute value. So let's pull the original t-chart. And the original t-chart for your absolute value was 0, 0. And then we have 1, 1. We have -1, 1. We have 2, 2, and -2, 2. Alright, so let's go see what transformations need to occur. So let's look at the inside portion here. So I have x plus 1 equals 0. So x is -1. So we also now know that we need to move to the left 1. It looks like we have a negative on the outside, so that means we need to reflect over the x-axis. And we need to move left 1. And we need to move up 4. So let's go make some changes to our t-chart and see what we can do with it. So let's see. Reflect over the x-axis. So that means that our y values are going to become negative or change their signs. So we're going to change all of those signs. There, we've reflected over the x. We need to go left 1. So we need to move this to the left 1. And then we need to move up 4. Alright, so let's now build our new t-chart and see what the numbers look like. So it looks like we should have -1, 4. We should have 0, 3. We should have -2, 3, 1, 2. And then, let's see, -1, so -3, 2. Now it's time to plot this. So we have -1, 4, 0, 3, -2, 3, 1, 2, there we go. My pen was cutting out. Alright, and then -3, 2. And I'm starting to see that absolute value shape, so we're going to draw this. Alright, so there's our new graph with our new points on it. Okay, now for our next one, again, same thing. We definitely need to go through and build us a new T-chart. We're going to start with the old one. And for graphs like this, it's definitely handy because finding new points for this one is really tough. But knowing your original T-chart does help it. Okay, so we have 0, 0. We had 1, 1, -1, -1. We had 8, 2, and -8, -2. Right, now let's talk about what's going to go on with this. Well, we have a negative here, so we are going to reflect over the y-axis. Okay, and let's see, we have this right here, so we know that we're going to take -x plus 2, so equal to 0, so -x equals -2, so x is 2. So then we're going to move right 2 and then down 3. Okay, and so we have all of our transformations now going on with this. And so it looks like we're ready just to go ahead and do the transformations. So reflect over the y, so it looks like we need to change signs over here on the x. So the x is, let's see, oh, I don't like that, but that's going to show us where we've changed our signs. So there's our changing our signs. And then right 2, so we're just going to add a 2 to each one. And then down 3, so we're going to subtract 3 from each one. Now build you a new T-chart. Alright, so for our first, we should have 2, -3. Then we should have 2 minus 1, 1, wouldn't it be? 1 and then -2. Then we should have 3, -4. we should have -6, -1, and 10, -5. And there's some pretty points to graph this. So 2, -3, 1, -2, 3, -4, -6, -1, and 10, +5. Oh goodness. So we're going to go way out here to the edge, and 10 and -5. It's going to be way down here. And so it does look like it has that cube root shape. Don't forget your arrows. And notice we're able to graph the cube root with nice, neat points. All right, and so now our cubic function, and it's the same pattern again. We are going to go get our basic t-chart and build from it. So we had 0, 0, we had 1, 1, -1 cubed is -1, 2 cubed is 8, and -2 cubed is -8. Now let's go see what we need to do with this one. Right here, we're going to reflect over the y-axis. So we're changing all of the x's, and then again, -x plus 4 equals 0, -x equals -4, so x is 4. So that means you're moving to the right 4, and you're going to move up 1. Alright, so there's all of the different transformations. Now let's go through and change them, reflecting over the y, so we need to change some signs there. So our signs are changed. We're going to go right 4, so I'm adding 4 to these. Okay, and then up 1, so now I need to add 1. Alright, so let's see what our new t-chart looks like and get ready to plot this. Alrighty, so we're going to have 4, 1. We're going to have 3, 2. Next, we're going to have 5, 0. Then we're going to have 2, 9. And then finally, we're going to have 6, -7. All right, so now let's go through and plot our points. So we have 4, 1. So 4, 1. We have 3, 2. 5, 0. 2, 9. And 6, -7. And it looks like we have that general shape again. We have our cubed. Uh-oh. we've got our points. All right. So again, there's another moving around, doing our transformations, but we're using our T-chart and we're getting those exact points needed. All right, now we're going to use the same thing. However, we are going to kind of refer back to, again, what's going on with the coordinate. We are pulling from our x and y. What is it doing to the x's? What's going on to the y's? In other words, looking at what we have here, right here, what is going on with that? Well, notice nothing is going on with the x's. Remember, f of x, let's refer back to Algebra 1, which has been a while, so we're probably not going to remember. Remember, f of x took the place of y. And so, really, what this is saying is negative y plus 2. And it's not talking anything about x, so x is just going to be the same. So right here, that's what we have going on. That's what's working with our coordinates. So if we want to build a new function g, it's saying leave x alone. So over here, it's saying state the shifts, and we'll come back and do that in just a minute. But it's saying, well, what's going on with this, and how is that going to change and make g? So we're going to break down each coordinate. Well, for x, notice they're not really giving us anything for x. So for each one of these x coordinates on f of x, it's going to be the same x coordinate on g of x. And again, I know that because here's the translation they gave us. G of x is equal to negative f of x plus 2. So they didn't give us any transformation involving x. All right, so now let's talk about y, the y coordinate. Notice the y coordinate for g of x is going to be the opposite of y plus 2. So I'm going to say the opposite of y plus 2. So that's going to give me negative 3. So the ordered pairs on g of x is going to be negative 3 from the x, and the y is also negative 3. Wish they hadn't made it the same. All right, let's look at the next one. Same thing, we're looking for the y coordinate. So it says the opposite of y, so negative 1. Because here the y is 1. So negative 1 plus 2, that's going to give us 1. And so the coordinates is going to be negative 1, positive 1. Alright, the next one is going to be the opposite of y, so that's going to be a positive 4 plus 2, which is 6. So the coordinate is going to be 1, 6. Alright, the next one, the opposite of y, so that's going to be negative 1 plus 2, so that's going to be a 1. And so my coordinates would be 3, 1. And it looks like one might have gotten cut off. Looks like 5-2 got cut off for some reason. Or it's different. If you have 5-2 on your paper, then let's go ahead and do that one. It looks like 5-2 is cut off on this one for some reason. Alright, so I'm going to just block in 5, 2 here. So the x is 5, and then over here you're going to have the opposite of y plus 2. That's going to give you 0, so the coordinate is 5, 0. Alright, so that's how you would read these. And notice how they've done their t-chart. The t-chart is turned on its side. You will see a lot of t-charts turned on its side, so get used to that. Normally x is on top, f of x is bottom. So do pay attention to that. Alright, same thing again. And hey, 5, 2 is not cut off on this one. Alright, so same thing. So let's pay attention again to what's going on where. And let's see, this one does look like this time that you've got some parts going with x and parts going with y. So let's see if we can figure out what's going on with it. So let's see, we've got 3 times all of this in here and then a minus 3. So I would go ahead and say, well, what's going on with x? It looks like x is going to go left 2, and then for your y, it's going to be multiplied by 3, and then lowered or subtracted by 3. Alright, and so there's your coordinates, there's what's going on with it. And so let's see if we can't do x first. X is going to be subtracted, x is subtracting 2. So negative 3 minus 2, negative 3 minus 2, it's going to be negative 5. Then the next one, negative 1 minus 2, it's going to be negative 3, positive 1 minus 2, that's going to be negative 1, and then 3 minus 2 is positive 1, and then 5 minus 2 is 3. So there's your first set. Now for the next one, the y, you're going to multiply by 3, then subtract 3. So let's see what we get from there. So we're looking at 5, and so we're going to say 3 times 5 minus 3. That's going to give me 15 minus 3, so 12. So that ordered pair is negative 5, 12. Okay, so we're going to say 3 times 1 minus 3. That's going to give us 0. And so our ordered pair is negative 3, 0. And then the next one, we're going to have 3 times negative 4 minus 3. So that's going to give us negative 15. And so our ordered pair is negative 1, negative 15. Then we're going to do 3 times 1 minus 3. That's going to give us 0. So we're going to have 1, 0. And then finally, we're going to have 3 times 2 minus 3. So it's going to give us 3. So that ordered pair is 3, 3. Okay, for our last one like this, again, we are going to pull what's going on with our x values first, and that's going to be found in there, so it's negative x plus 3, and then what's going on the y is out here, so that's going to be y minus 2. Alright, so now let's go ahead and adjust and see what we can do. With our x coordinate, it's going to be the opposite of x plus 3. So the opposite of x plus 3, so we're going to get the opposite of negative 3, which is 3 plus 3, 6. And then the opposite of negative 1, which is 1, plus 3 is 4. Negative 1 plus 3 is 2. Negative 3 plus 3 is 0. And negative 5 plus 3 is negative 2. Alright, let's go look at the y's. Then we'll put together our ordered pairs. The y values are going to subtract 2. So 5 minus 2 is 3. 1 minus 2 is negative 1. Negative 4 minus 2 is negative 6. And let's see, 1 minus 2 is negative 1. And 2 minus 2 is 0. So putting together our ordered pairs, we have 6, 3. We have 4, negative 1. We have 2, negative 6. We have 0, negative 1. And we have negative 2, comma 0. All right. Next part is our piecewise functions, and we're going to remember how to graph those, and you are welcome to use all of the parent function information that we have discussed. So if that will help you, you're welcome to use it. We've not talked about lines, but the wonderful thing about lines is they have slope, and so slope will help us graph very quickly. Let's go ahead and do a quick refresher with lines. So I'm going to move down to the bottom of the page and give a quick reminder. Y equals mx plus b, and I'd rather put m over 1 and remind you that m over 1 is your slope. And that's what you called rise over run. And then b, which was really the ordered pair 0b, and that is your y-intercept. And it's really you start at that y-intercept and then go to your slope, and you count off that slope. All right. With your piecewise functions, I do encourage you, of course, to do a t-chart, because if you don't, you tend to forget some important points. The first important point and second important point is sitting right here. Students always say they don't know where to start with a piecewise function. Well, it's right there. You use your boundaries. And somebody always says, well, it says it's greater than, not equal to. Well, then that tells you to use an open circle. So that one's going to be open, that one's going to be closed. That's all that means. So same thing down here, you're going to use 4, but that one's going to be open. If for some reason these two overlap, the closed will always take precedence over the open. So now you know what to use. You're going to use -1 and 4, and then you'll use 4 again when we get to the bottom or the slope. Alright, so use -1, and we're going to plug it in, and I encourage you to use mental math, because if you don't, you're going to have a lot of work. So plug in -1. -1 minus 2 is -3. -3 squared is 9. 9 minus 3 is 6. So you have an open point at -1, 6. And then plug in 4. 4 minus 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. 4 minus 1, or 4 minus 3 is 1. So you have the close point at 4, 1. Okay, now that does not look like the parabola yet. So now between those, we know originally it would start at 0, 0. Let's see if we can't do some moving for it. We know it's going to go right 2 and down 3. So right 2 and down 3. And that's a for sure point. Alright, that's enough for us to get our piecewise right there. Notice this is a piecewise. It's just going to be a little piece of it. It's not like the other ones we were graphing. So this is enough for that one. Now let's go look at the other part. So I'm going to change colors, and we're going to look at this line. So I'm going to draw a longer bar here, and I'm going to say, okay, I got to plug in 4 for this bottom one. If I plug in 4, then I'm going to say, oh, this is going to be 2/3 times 4, and this is where everybody wants to go grab a calculator. And I'm going to say, no, you don't need it. This is normal math. Alright, so 2/3 times 4, that's going to be 8/3 plus, well, how many thirds is a 2? Isn't that 6/3? And so that's going to give me 14/3. If you're not sure where that came from, reduce 6/3. That'll give you a 2. That's where it came from. Now, change this to a mixed number. 3 goes into 14 4 times with 2 left over. So it's 4 2/3. You know what you do about that? You go somewhere between 4 and 5 and make your point. So here it's 4 and then 4 2/3. So that's where you need to start with your line. So we're going to go to 4, and then we need to go 4 2/3. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a little bit more and make an open circle. Now count off your slope. You're going to go up 2. That's rise over run. So up 2 over 3 and make a solid circle. Then up 2 over 3. You got you a good line. The awesome thing about lines is they're the easiest things to graph. Always use your slope. Always, always, always. And that's it for your piecewise function. You didn't have to come up, we did have to, well, I'll take that back. You did need to come up with an extra point for the parabola to get its shape. Alright, let's look at the next one. Again, let's do a T-chart. And it looks like there's not but just one good point out there. We've got -1 to deal with. Looks like we're going to have open, closed, and open. So there's our points. And if we are going to do our open, close, let's see. So for the first one, let's plug in -1 and mental math. So plug in -1. So that's going to give me 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. And that's the only point we've got so far. So let's say -1, 2, and it's going to be an open circle. And that's all we've got for this, but we know this thing is a little bit more. We know we can do a little more. Let's try parent function transformation and see if we fall within our border. We've got to stay to the left of this point. So we know we're going to go left 2 and up 1. So from 0, 0, we're going to go left 2 and up 1. So we did get a point there. Well, that's about all we got. So let's see. Let's mental math some more points. Let's plug in. We did -1. We did -2. We've got to stay to the left. What about -3? Let's plug in -3, mental math it. So that's going to be 1 plus 1, 2. Hey, that might work. 3, 1, 2. There's our V shape. So there we go. Okay, now what are we going to do? This is so weird. This right here is just an ordered pair. If you ever see that, that right there is just the ordered pair, -1, 3. That's all it wants from you. So we're going to go over -1 up 3, and it's a closed circle. And that's it for that one. It looks a lot tougher, but that's it for that one. Oh, now we've got a line. We have to use -1. I'm going to change colors. -1. If we plug in, we have -1/2 times -1 plus 5. So that's 1/2 plus 5. Don't make this hard. That's just 5.5. So at -1, I'm going to go up 5.5, and I'm going to put an open circle. Now remember, we're just going to count off slope after that. Here's our slope. We're going to go down 1 over 2. So we're going to go down 1 over 2. Put a mark. Down 1 over 2. Okay, and then we are going to connect our lines. There's our piecewise function. Okay, now let's go ahead and finish up our piecewise functions. Now we have, again, starting out with the T-chart. And notice we have 0 and -4 that we need to use. And so, starting out with the 0, again, do the mental math. So I'm going to plug in, let's start with -4, move far left. So Plugging in negative 4, that's going to give us 2. 2 plus 3 is 5. And that's going to be a closed circle. And this is going to be open, close, and open. Help us remember. And so negative 4, 5. So we said that was going to be closed. And now let's plug in 0. We're going to get 3. Here. Oh, that was open. That would be better if we had that open for sure. And remember, this parent function right here, it's just been reflected over the x. So this is really going to do something like this in its reflection. So notice it's turned. So that's really all we need between negative 4 and 0. Notice the next part. This is very similar to the other. That means that we have 0, 2 as a point. So 0, 2, and that's a closed circle. And then we need to plug in our next point, and that is 0 again, and that's going to give us 0 and then 3 again, and it's just our parent function, the square root of x. So we need to go through then and let's plot off some points that we know. Do we remember any good points that we can pick and kind of straighten up? And maybe 4 would be a good point. That's something bigger than 0 that we could use. And if we plug in 4, that's going to give us 2 plus 3, which is 5. So we're going to go over 4 and then up to 5. And that's a for sure point. And that's going to give us a good guide for our graph. All right. So now let's move on to our last one. Oh dear, that's a lot of numbers. Let's go ahead and do our t-chart. Maybe it won't be as bad as it looks. Alright, so we have negative 2 and positive 1 to deal with. Alright, so plugging in negative 2, that's going to give us 0. And 0 plus 2 is 2. So I have negative 2, 2, and that's going to be an open circle. And so we need something else less than 2. Oh goodness. So let's see, what else can we do? We do know that this is a square root function, and we know that it's been flipped around the y-axis, and it's been moved to the right 2 and up 2, but oh, that's not going to work. No, it's been moved to the left 2 and up 2, so it's going to be that same function there. So that's not going to work. So we might have to go and look at our old t-chart. Oh no. So what was our old t-chart? We had 0, 0, 1, 1, and then we had 9, 3. And what all have we done to this function? Goodness, we have moved it, let's see, to the left -2, so that's going to be -3, and that's going to be, and then we flipped it around too, so yeah, so that's going to be -11. Goodness gracious. And then what are we doing to the y's? We are bumping those up too, so then that's going to be a 2, a 3, and a 5. So we have -2, 2. We have that point. We need -3, 3. That would be another good point. So -3, 3. And 11, 5. That was a tricky booger right there. Not real fond of that. So that one's going to go out that way. We had to pull back all the way back to that other. And then, oh, now we've got a line from -2 to 1. So let's go find our plugging in points. Oh, I didn't plug in. Oh, hadn't got there yet. Alright, so let's draw a line. And we're going to have another -2 there. So plug in 1. And if we plug in 1 right here, we're working right there. So if we plug in a 1, that's going to give us -2 minus 2, so -4. If we plug in -2, that's going to give us 4 minus 2, which is 2. Now let's see. We've got -2, 2, which is open. And then we have one -4. And that one is also open. And so that's just, pretend that's a straight line. So we have a straight line for that portion. And so now we're ready for the last part. We're ready for this portion. Okay, so draw another line, and we just need a 1 for that one. And so substituting in a 1, we're going to get 0 and then -4. So -4. And so we're going to get the point 1, -4 again. And it's open, so we already have that point. So let's go back to getting us some good points so we can plot. So we have 0, 0, 1, 1, 9, and 3. And think about what's happened here. The y's are negative. Notice the negatives on the outside, so the y's are negative. And then we've gone to the right one, so gonna add a 1 and subtract a 4. So what are our points now? So it looks like we have a 1 and a -4, which we already knew. Gee, thanks for nothing. 2 and -5. Hey, we didn't have that point. So 2 and -5. So there's the point. And then 10 and -7. 10 and -7. So now we have that shape. There we go. That's it. My goodness.